On the line?
Welcome to the GCI. Thank you. Please stand by. If you are the chairperson, press the star. Now please enter your chair. You will now be placed into conference. There are 5 participants in the conference.
Hello, council members. We're going to start by saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I've already called the meeting to order, so I'll go ahead and lead that. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Madam Clerk, can we please have a roll call?
Tonight's roll call. Cease is excused, hopefully not on the line. Cease is excused. Lutz?
Yes.
Bucklawn?
Present.
Kreitz?
Here.
McClure?
Here.
Osenga?
Here.
Mayor Terry?
Yes.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. So next on the agenda is approval of the agenda and consent agenda. Madam Clerk, do I have, from the council, do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Do we have citizens' comments?
Oh, I'm sorry. Let's do citizen comments on any subject except those
Sorry.
items scheduled for public hearing.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Tonight we have 3 citizens who have submitted comments for council. And I will put the timer on. The first person is Dwayne Atwood. I am writing to express my support for the joint PIDP grant application to expand the Seward Freight Dock and relieve industrial traffic pressure on Port Avenue. A successful grant application by the Alaska Railroad and the City of Seward would leverage critical funding to help the community meet the demands of shipping growth and better manage traffic for decades to come. Currently, docking conflicts result in expensive delays. Worse, some shipments bypass the port altogether. While Seward's role in developing the state of Alaska continues today, the Alaska Railroad freight dock does not fully meet the needs of modern shipping. Adding linear footage to the dock would provide berthing for more than one freight barge at a time. Widening the dock will also help to serve specific shippers that currently are unable to extend longer ramps for truck offloading. Relocating the current sediment groin and dredging the east side of the freight dock will help to move some industrial cargo farther from the current cruise ship dock. The community has seen ample evidence that increased vessel traffic creates more entrepreneurial opportunity. The addition of marine support businesses will continue to provide more year-round jobs and economic diversification. The increased capacity will also boost Seward's role as a backup port for Anchorage. Developing a new route for industrial traffic will undoubtedly make the terminal reserve and waterfront safer. The Alaska Railroad's infrastructure in Seward is by any definition intermodal. Traffic that ranges from cargo vessels, cruise ships, and trains must be managed along with trucks, buses, and the pedestrians who walk along Port Avenue. Developing an alternative northern route for truck traffic would help protect the thousands of cruise ship passengers who will make their way to and from the terminal on a typical summer day. We all know this port has been a key gateway for South Central Alaska, providing both rail and highway transport of goods and materials vital to our everyday lives. Those who came before us made that happen. Now is not the time to overlook the statewide, regional, and international benefits of meeting the demands of modern transportation. The opportunities that will come will be the legacy we leave. It's really hard.
Yeah, sorry.
I don't like this, Matt.
Yeah.
It's a little thicker tonight.
Yeah, sorry. And just let me take a second while you catch your breath and thank all the public who's utilizing the temporary process for citizen comments.
Okay, second comment is from Doug Ward. I understand the Rural Energy Savings Program provides loans to rural utilities and other companies who provide energy efficiency loans to qualified consumers to implement durable, cost-effective, energy-efficient measures. As you know, we at JAG Alaska are extremely interested in positioning Seward as a premier marine industrial support center, capable of attracting new business opportunities through competitive pricing and performance of quality work, completed on or before completion dates, at or below budgeted costs, while exceeding customer quality expectations. Seward's energy costs are much higher than what competing shipyards in Alaska must pay. I will be calling into the webinar to learn how the program works. I've also contacted USDA Rural Development to see what other programs and USDA opportunities exist in Alaska to finance durable energy infrastructure capable of producing competitive price electrical energy. Thank you, Councilmember Baclan.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
And then last is a comment from, let me just check. Mr. Jim Kubitz would like to be contacted, actually.
Okay.
He did leave a statement, but he wants to be contacted.
Hello, this is Jim.
Hi, Jim. You're on the speaker here at the council meeting.
Oh, great.
Appreciate it. Go ahead and provide your up to 3 minutes of comments.
Well, I don't think I'll have 3 minutes, but I'm glad to make the call. As you know, you have a resolution in front of you, which we would like to include with our application for a grant to widen and lengthen the Seward Freight Dock. We've been working on it. We've hired a company to help us out on it. So we're gathering support letters, and this is similar to one I think you guys passed last time. We didn't get the grant, but just want to say that we're pretty encouraged this time. As you know, the railroad is extremely committed to Seward, and I personally have been committed to trying to get an improvement on that freight dock because we need it, we want it, and I think it'll be good for the city and good for the railroad, good for the community to be able to service more freight vessels there, barges. Obviously, we'll be able to fit larger ships in there and pretty much put Seward on the map as a freight destination. So we're just hoping that the council supports that. Certainly haven't answered the questions. I don't know if that's appropriate during this, but just want to say that the railroad is behind us 100%, and we're trying real hard to make this investment. It's going to be about a $25 million investment, you know, in this facility. But we've been trying to do it for a couple of years, and we're going to continue trying to do it, though. That's just I wanted to say that we're here for you.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Kubitz.
Thank you. Mr.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot. Have a good evening.
You too, sir. Thanks.
Bye.
That's all the citizens,
That's all
Madam
the
Mayor.
citizen comments. Thank you. So next on the agenda is the approval of the agenda and consent agenda. Do I have a motion from council for an approval of the agenda?
This is McClure. I move for the approval of the agenda and the consent agenda.
Are there any seconds?
Second, Osenga.
Thank you. So I have one change. I'm going to pull Resolution 20033 off the consent agenda. And right now I'll go through the list and see if there's any other changes or amendments to the agenda and consent agenda. Osenga?
No, nothing.
Thank you. Councilmember Baclan?
No, thank you.
Councilmember Butts?
Nothing.
Councilmember Kreitz?
None.
Councilmember, Vice Mayor McClure.
No, I have none.
Thank you. So, since there's no other discussion or changes, Madam Clerk, would you call for the vote, please?
Voting on tonight's agenda and consent agenda as amended. Osenga?
Yes.
Buckland?
Yes.
Butts?
Yes.
Kreitz?
Yes.
McClure?
Yes.
And Mayor Terry.
Yes.
Your agenda and consent agenda are approved. On tonight's consent agenda, you've approved the introduction of ordinance 20-005, adopting Seward City Council temporary emergency COVID-19 regulation number 1, entitled Pickup Parking Spots, and authorizing business owners to designate up to 2 curbside pickup parking spots for their customers during the state of emergency arising from COVID-19. So this ordinance will come for public hearing and enactment on May 11th. Also approved on consent are the April 13th regular meeting minutes and the April 15th special meeting minutes.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next on the agenda is proclamations and awards. The first one is the International Firefighters Day proclamation. We will read these proclamations and then they'll be given to the correct parties. So, whereas International Firefighters Day was established in 1999 to remember those firefighters worldwide who lost their lives in the line of duty protecting us all, and whereas the role of all firefighters in today's society is one of dedication, commitment, and sacrifice, regardless of what country they reside and work in, and whereas International Firefighters Day recognizes firefighters who have served in their communities for most of their lives, as well as firefighters who have served for just a few short years, and whereas these men and women set themselves apart as model citizens, setting a fine example in their communities with their willingness and dedication to protect others, and whereas hailing from all walks of life, they are our mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, grandparents, neighbors, and friends, and they protect us without the wanting of recognition or reward, and whereas firefighters are there with courage, compassion, and loyalty in our time of need, and they are the essence of the true meaning of community. Now, therefore, I, Christy Terry, Mayor of the City of Seward, Alaska, do hereby encourage all citizens to recognize not only our local firefighters, but those worldwide on May 4th, 2020, and year-round for their courage, selfless service, and sacrifice. And even though they're not here, let me just say we have an excellent fire chief, we have a brand new excellent assistant chief, and we get the best deal of any city department with all our highly trained volunteers. So thank you very much to the fire department. Next proclamation is Building Safety Month. Let me take a deep breath for this one. Whereas the City of Seward is committed to recognizing that our growth and strength depends on the safety and economic value in the homes, buildings, and infrastructure that serve our citizens both in their everyday lives and natural disaster. Whereas our confidence in the structural integrity of those buildings that make up our community is achieved through the devotion of building safety and fire prevention officials, architects, engineers, builders, tradespeople, and others in the construction industry who work year-round to ensure the safe construction of buildings where we live, learn, work, and play. Whereas our nation benefits economically and technologically from using the international codes that are developed by a national voluntary consensus codes and standards developing organization. And whereas these modern building codes that include safeguards to protect the public from natural disasters such as hurricanes, snowstorms, tornadoes, wildland fires, floods, and earthquakes. And whereas Building Safety Month is sponsored by the International Council to remind the public of the role of communities, large unknown protectors of public safety, and our local code officials who assure us of safe, efficient, and livable buildings that are essential to America's prosperity. And whereas safer buildings, safer communities, safer world, the theme of the Building Safety Month 2020 encourages all Americans to raise awareness about the importance of safe and resilient construction, fire prevention, disaster mitigation, new technologies in the construction industry. And whereas Building Safety Month 2020 encourages appropriate steps everyone can take to ensure that the safety of our built environment and recognize that the implementation of safety codes by local and state agencies have saved lives and protected homes and businesses. And whereas each year in observance of Building Safety Month, Americans are asked to consider the commitment to improve building safety and economic investment at home and in and to acknowledge the essential service provided to all of us by local and state building departments, fire prevention bureaus, and the federal agencies in protecting lives and property. Now therefore, I, Christy Terry, Mayor of the City of Seward, Alaska, do hereby proclaim the month of May 2020 as Building Safety Month, and do encourage all citizens to participate in Building Safety Month activities. So again, our building department is under our fire department, so I just want to thank the building official and those folks for making sure that construction in our community is done safely. So thank you to both those guys. Next on the agenda is the city manager's report. City Manager Mazzaros?
Hi, thank you. So I just want to point out to the public that the city offices will all reopen on Monday the 4th. So that's a week from today. We are working on, May 1st is usually the first day that they start charging for the campgrounds. We're converting to an online registration kind of housing software that allows you to pre-register. So we're trying to work out some of the kinks with how do we separate people. And so the water is not on, the bathrooms are not open. So until we get a little bit of direction, the software is not available. We aren't just open to the public for camping yet. We will get the notice out when that's deemed appropriate. We do have people showing up, people calling constantly. So that's something we're still working out. Our destination, our plan was to have it open and ready for May 1st, barring this. So we're still working on things like if we do get up and running, we don't have any of our summer staff hired. So we have kind of an issue with staffing, and there's a lot to do around those projects as far as turning on all the water tables. So we're getting a plan of action in place to try to get those operations back up and running. There are quite a bit of progress reports in here if there are specific questions. I talk about all the COVID stuff later when we get to those items.
So I'm going to go through and I'm going to call council members' names. If you'd like to ask the city manager questions regarding the city manager's report or other items, I'm going to start with council member Butts. Did you have any questions or comments for the city manager?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Two questions. One, to the city manager, how are we doing financially as we get into, as we're going through this crisis, and how are we looking to weather the storm?
Okay, that's the first question. That is a good question. So it's really hard to tell because we base our projections quarterly. So when taxes are filed, sales tax, all of the typical collections, we are having some lag in trying to get all of our end of month closed out. So far, it's really not an easy thing to decipher this early into the process. I mean, most of the things that we've been doing, obviously the sales tax will still be, it ends in March, so it'll be, end of May, start of June when we actually get those received. So it's difficult to put numbers to those. We are doing estimates based on kind of what everybody else is estimating with their financial teams. So it's really hard to say that. We are cutting back obviously on major expenses like travel, training. There are a lot of things that are simply not being paid out at this point because staff and our operations have pretty much shortened up and ceased up. A lot of the major expenses in the budget we've been actually putting on hold. So for example, the police department, some of the other vehicles, we're kind of waiting to see until we initiate that, kind of where we're going. There were some kind of false pretenses early on. The governor and AML sent out some distribution information about the CARES Act. I was called some of the legislators that had not gone through the legislator and the branch, so it's kind of preliminary, and those numbers everybody's seeing are potentially maybe not going to be encumbered or received. Maybe they are. So we don't really, we're being conservative and not planning, we're not counting our chickens before they're hatched, so to speak. At this point, it's really, it's a little different than private business because we do have, billings and receiving sales tax. Property tax is usually paid And it's, 2 years from now, you might see a year from now, you'll see a big hit on that. So it's really hard to give a projection on that. But financially, I mean, we're very sound. Our reserves are still, we haven't touched a lot of our general fund reserve to go into long-term management. We have roughly about 6 months of general fund reserve, which is our general operations, police, fire, administration, planning. So, that's not a whole lot, but a lot of places don't really have that much. 6 months is kind of a nice, like you said last time, it's nice that the financial and previous councils and boards really did a good job of kind of maintaining and building that up. We anticipate those will be diminished. Charlie at the borough said he believes their reserve account is going to be severely diminished from where it is. I prefer not to tell you those numbers just because that was kind of a closed meeting. So it's really hard to tell at this point. I think we're moving ahead conservatively, and if we get revenues, and a lot of these things are from missed opportunity, right? So you have diminished visitation and sales. You can't really just make that up. It's going to take, several years. Hopefully this isn't a cyclical thing that we get next year or late winter and it continues to kind of diminish. So we're hoping that it's kind of a get through this, build back up, and it would probably take 3 to 5 years to just kind of build those to where they were. At this point, it's not a panic. I think everybody should, it's just like everyone's personal checkbooks and their finances. You don't want to not make your car payments for several months and all of a sudden you owe 5 back car payments. Kind of the same thing with your utility bills. If you can pay them, pay them. If if you're in a position where you can't pay your bills, obviously paying your utilities and things is kind of your last concern. So, don't want to go too overboard, but did you have a second question?
Councilmember Butts?
Yes, that did very well, thank you.
Did you have a follow-up question, sir?
No, it was just those two kind of questions.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Kreitz?
I have no question.
Thank you. Councilmember Osenga?
I have no question.
Thank you. Councilmember Baklan?
I have a few questions, so if we can just take it one by one.
That sounds good. Go ahead.
Follow-up. First one's a follow-up to Councilmember Buxton's question about finances. I noticed on the governor's website, it didn't say anything from the CARES Act on how much was actually going to the communities. Was there any update from AML or legislative means of, I know you just said that we weren't going to counter chickens before the eggs hatched, but is there any idea, is everything outlined on that website of where certain money is going? So are we looking at really not getting anything at all?
That is a good question. So that's really going to depend on how the legislative branch looks at where they overstepped, or can the governor and the appropriation go circumvent that process. That'll really determine whether or not the actual amounts. There were some tabulation and estimation errors, obviously. When you take every municipality in the state of Alaska and the municipal league takes, generally here's what everybody paid last year and collected, and then you try to project to where they're going. There's going to be some communities that obviously have differences and problems and things that are not the same this year as they were last year. For us, I think that's, we've been getting a lot of questions about that because that did circulate around. I'm not sure where exactly that came from. Several different sources. I got it from our legislators. I got the governor's office. Some of the communities are pretty large, and it's basically based on what your current revenues are. So places like Sitka and Juneau, Sitka, they're saying like 14 million. I don't have the whole list here. Our numbers, they were going to do 3 distributions, roughly about 5.3 million. That's ironically, when you look at our total lost revenue we're projecting, most of the entities are projecting 21 to 28% is what assuming this doesn't go, into October and things don't happen all summer, that would be a lot. Initially, they started looking at 50 to 70%, which would be pretty catastrophic, I think, for anybody. So realistically, if we say we take a 25% hit, you can look at our revenue stream and just multiply that by 0.25 and get an idea roughly the money that we're seeing that was, it's not obligated because it didn't go to legislature, but that's about what our loss is from missed revenue. So it's really not, it's not a windfall, it's not additional money, it's money that, this is what we estimate you're gonna not collect be due to this. So, it's kind of like if you look at it like your salary, what happens if you take a quarter of your salary away? Are you still able to make all your commitments? The city's pretty trim on a lot of things, so our budget's not got a whole lot of things in there you could just hack off without reducing services. So, there's a lot of work. I mean, obviously anything could be done. If that does happen, we're planning to not get it. If we do get it, it will obviously benefit and kind of move us forward. So it's really, it's hard to quantify that. You can't really just say yes, no, it looks great, it looks bad. At this point, it's really preliminary, and the projections are what the projections are. So I don't know, lots of these funds are, it's kind of like they're doing with some of the SBA and the other monies to businesses. I mean, that's great if everyone is lined out to get a certain amount, but when you go to divide it up, and if there's nothing left in the pot, it's really hard to feel like that's going to be a helpful tool.
Thank you, City Manager. Councilmember Baclan, did that answer your question? And then you said you had another question also?
Yes, thank you. Also, with finances, it says that we're on the bottom of the personnel report or the hires, new hires, that there's a hiring freeze right now. And then you spoke earlier about if we are opening up the campground, are we then going to lift that hiring freeze to hire the seasonal staffing for the parks?
So there, we did say, we're trying to minimize or reduce any kind of personnel actions unless we need to do them right now. So it's not technically everything is frozen. We have had some positions that we've had people leave. We did get our planner, so Eric actually drove up during this whole event, and he actually got here on, I think it was the end of end of March. So he was supposed to start the first week of April, which he did. And that was a hire that we had, arranged and created before this even started. So he is on board and being trained up and doing a great job. A lot of those, if you look at the report, there's quite a few positions that we have in the seasonal category. Most of them are with Park and Rec. There are some in the harbor. They did advertise kind of before this started. They have interviewed some people from the applicant pools they had. We are, keeping those applications. If they submit them, we are open to taking applications. And at this point, obviously, if the campground's open, we're going to need to have at least a few individuals. We probably will do a reduced, minimized staff if possible, because we just don't anticipate having the kinds of numbers. But it's really hard to see. I mean, this weekend, it was the first weekend. I didn't anticipate not being able to get across out into the highway. So if this is just the first weekend, who knows? The peninsula is really marketing coming down here. I think a lot of us feel like it's going to be the year that Alaskans experience the coastal communities like Cordova and Homer and us. So that could be, what happens if we have more visitation from Alaskans than we normally would. That could be overwhelming on our staffing and our cleaning, especially with cleaning products and that type of thing.
Councilmember Baclan, did you have something else also?
Yes, I did. I also was a little concerned about our return from the census. I do want to say thank you to community development for putting up flyers around town promoting the census and promoting people to do the census. I feel there was a problem with the main census rollout? Because a lot of people seem to be waiting for a direct mailer that gives them the number to enter into the website. And I was wondering if the city would be able to do some kind of direct mailer saying that, you don't need to have that number, that you can still go onto the census website. They're not receiving those numbers because those numbers those mailers are only supposed to go out to house, addresses, not P.O. boxes. So I'm wondering if the city is thinking about anything like that to boost up our numbers for the census.
Who you want to speak to that, Jackie?
Yeah, I can speak to that.
Can you come to the microphone, please? Thank you, Councilmember Bucklawn, the Community Development Director here, and she's going to answer that question.
Councilmember Bucklawn, through the mayor, we are already processing a flyer that will be a mailer, just like we did with our tsunami exercise. It will also have the steps on how to apply without your 12-digit code. So I would say to look for those in the next week and a half.
So, and while we have you there, Councilmember Bucklawn, I'm just going to ask a couple follow-ups. So, we have only 20% of
20.6%
currently that
as
have,
of yesterday.
okay. And then the deadline now is August 15th. So
Correct.
people can continue to fill out their census information.
Correct. And anybody that's, we've had a lot of questions concerning people being outside of the city and not being able to log in and apply. You can, regardless of where you are, if you live in Seward, you fill it out with your physical address in Seward, it goes to us.
Okay.
So if you're in the lower 48 because you're quarantined down there and you're not able to travel, you can still fill it out if this is your home address.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Bucklawn, does that answer your request?
Yes, I want to say thank you again, Jackie. I didn't know you were there because I'm not watching. But the flyers and the posters look really good. I think you did a really good job on them. I really enjoyed them. I'm hoping that, before this all happened, I was working with the Chamber and Seaview on trying to reach the lower population, the underserved population that Alaska Council was focusing on. So maybe we can work together on some other projects that maybe we can get some of the businesses involved, putting up more flyers and stuff. Through the Chamber, there's funding. They applied for a grant. So there's some funding available for that, and hopefully we can work together and figure out more solutions to get our numbers up. I just want to say thank you again. And those are all of the questions that I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Bucklawn. Vice Mayor McClure?
I have no questions.
Thank you. I just have a couple things for the city manager. So if a public person has questions about how a department's operating or if they need assistance, I just want to hear affirmative from you, my understanding. So folks can just get on the website, find the numbers to that department, and then call that number directly.
Yeah, I mean, so I've had some people asking because they've seen things in our reports. We are doing some tracking and conditions for the issues going on, but I don't know that those are really just designed to throw out to the public, here's all the stuff that's happening, and it's kind of a minutia. And I feel like, we already have a ton of information that takes time and assemblage. So contact, if you have questions from the departments, reach out to the departments. We'll be back in the offices next Monday.
Okay.
But the emails, the calling, it's hard because, where do you take that, a question and a simple conversation versus, I want to have this, 3 pages of questions answered, and it takes a lot of staff time to kind of do those types of things.
Or if I was just thinking if someone has a question about a Parks and Rec activity, they can call Parks and Rec, or harbor question, all those people
Yeah,
are
or
taking
even if
phone
they're out
calls
and about and they see them, I mean, hopefully we do a lot of cross-training, and not everybody knows all the answers, so we don't want people, talking about the harbor if they don't understand the rates and that kind of thing. But most of the staff does pretty diligently understand the operations and where to refer them and who to call, and we all have our phones, and we definitely want to take questions if there's concerns or issues. I feel like everybody does a real good job about that already, but yeah, we'll push it out there. The website has quite a bit of information on it. All the contacts are there.
And then I've been getting questions about the governor's Reopen Alaska Phase 1 plan. So I've been referring people to the state. Is there a local contact, or are you having people talk to the state? Like, how's that being handled?
So some of the departments are actually this week working on a rollout plan. The library, because the library has such a high usage, probably no one's been in there, right, because it's closed. The furniture and all the spacing, a lot of that's been moved to the basement. So it's kind of created this wider, more open, kind of like what you're hearing them do with restaurants. So some of the departments actually have a written plan where they're actually going through that. Most of us are going off of what the governor's mandates are because they change so rapidly. Those are all on our website. As of tonight, I do want to thank Brenda and Valerie's been a huge help to keep those. They just now are up to date again today. So like, if you have a question on L with camping and overnight stays, all of that stuff, it's referring to the mandates that are out there, but the state mandates and the actual websites are on there too. It's almost easier just to go right to the state of Alaska and the governor's site to make sure you're not seeing something that may be a couple hours out of date. It's pretty good on a daily basis, and it should all be there. But some of that stuff is just constantly, things that we heard on Friday are already different. Holly's been doing a lot of that too, and it's just kind of a moving target. The soft rollout, it feels like it was going to be coming like down the road, and all of a sudden it was like, okay, Friday, here's his mandates, and it's like, most of the people that I've encountered like this weekend, they don't have all the materials available. They don't have all the direction that they maybe need. So we've been trying to go, a lot of our staff went door to door trying to get the contracts, trying to talk to every business. That's going quite well. That's still in place. So, yeah, I think if you don't know something, call and ask and inquire. And we do have people in all the departments. So.
Good. Thank you very much. City Attorney Holly Wells, thank you for being with us tonight. Did you have a city attorney report?
I don't have, I have a written
Yep.
report, and I can take questions on that. I have a few comments on just how the protocols and procedures in place in sewer dovetail with the state for the public, if that would be just.
Why don't you start with that, and then I'll go through calling council and see if they have any questions. But that would be great to start with that. Thank you.
And I'll keep it really simple. I think it's just very important for the public and council to know that the rules adopted in Seward really they're very harmonious with the state and its reopening plan, in that even your private facility rule 11 says that the city's going to follow state recommendations unless there was some reason that council went further, and that would come through council. And so because of that, all of the openings, and those are the attachments regarding front-facing and non-public facing businesses, and also the road travel, that's all, you can go directly to the state mandate, you can stick close to the state mandate. The only differences in the city of Seward are the protocols, the protective measures and policies that businesses place on their door. That remains in effect. I do think that the criteria required by the city of Seward almost mirrors what the state is now requiring. They even call it protective measures and protocols, which Seward also, that's what we named it. So just, that's going to create some confusion. So just know you have this, and there's a sample on the website. You can use that to create your COVID-19 mitigation plan and also your protective measures and policies for the state. So we're hoping that is helpful and not more work for those businesses. Similarly, your mutual aid agreement requirement in the city of Seward remains in effect. And that mutual aid agreement has an acknowledgement form if you are someone who has to file a protocol. So one of the complications is the state also now has an acknowledgement form. So we have the same term. We call it a state protocol acknowledgement form, and the state now has an acknowledgement form. So if you're required to file an acknowledgement form by the state, You may also be filing an acknowledgement form for the city. That form is on your website. Those are two different forms. So it's only the mutual aid agreement and the protective measures and protocols that remain for Seward, things that the public and the business owners should be aware of.
Okay. That's great. Thank you very much. I'm going to go through council now, and I'll start with Councilmember Kreitz. Do you have any questions for the city attorney?
I do not.
Councilmember Osenga, do you have any questions for the city attorney?
No, I don't.
Councilmember Butts, do you have any questions for the city attorney?
No questions.
Thank you. Councilmember Baclan, do you have any questions for the city attorney?
First of all, I just wanted to say I want to apologize publicly for, Attorney Wells has returned returned the email last week. I unfortunately did not get to get it before the council meeting. So I want to apologize for saying that she did not get back to me. She did get back to me. The other question I'm sorry about that, Holly. I did get your email. The other question that I do have was that I'm concerned that a lot of our personnel issues are handled by our attorneys. And I'm not quite sure if because there's no details about it specifically because of attorney-client privilege, but it seems that we're dealing with all of our personnel issues with our attorneys. Is that something that is being required, or I'm not understanding why pretty much all of our personnel matters seem to be going through our attorney.
Did you want to start answering that?
Sure. So not all of your personnel matters are required to go through the attorney. So that is something, and your insurance carrier, AMLJIA, actually has an attorney hotline, and I know the city manager is utilizing that. But many of them are required to go through the city attorney when they involve termination, certain grievance procedures, and certain other actions, and that's a requirement put into play by the insurance company. So in order to receive coverage, they require those decisions to be reviewed and for the city attorney to provide an opinion prior to the action being taken. Does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Okay. Did you have a follow-up question, Councilmember Baclan?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor McClure?
I have no questions.
And I have no questions. Thank you, Attorney Wells. Next on the agenda is the Chamber of Commerce report, and I know that that's included in our packet on page 17. Is he going to be on the phone?
Yes.
Want me to
Okay.
call him?
Thank
We'd
you.
like to call the director. No, people on the phone are having a hard time hearing you and the city manager because you're both a little quiet, so.
Where
as
I
much
yell,
as- As much as you can speak up, would be great.
Hello.
Hi, Director Jason, we have you online. We've been referring to page 17 in our packet, and we'll give you a chance to give the chamber report.
All right, can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, very clear. Thank you.
Okay. Good evening, city council members. Just want to go over a few highlights from my report, and I feel like the way things are moving so quickly that sometimes because I submitted this a week ago, some things are already out of date, and there's a lot that has taken place that aren't in there. So first of all, I just want to thank all of the friends of the chamber and the community members that came out to support our virtual bar hop this last weekend. It was kind of a fun online gathering that we were able to raise some good money for our bar service employees that are out of work, and just kind of raise awareness and have a good time. So I just want to first thank everyone for their participation in that. Looking at my report, I did want to make a couple of highlights. One is I just want to thank our team, along with Janessa Anderson, who put together that video that I hope most of you guys have seen by now, trying to work both roles of making sure people are abiding by their travel regulations at all times, but also to letting people know that when things do open up, that we are here in this place that you want to come and be. Just the next kind of highlight is just looking at our budgets. We're just kind of getting our information from ATIA and just kind of looking at bed tax loss. But we're putting a great plan in place together that I'm really confident in. That we'll be able to kind of weather this and continue to provide sustainable marketing services for the city of Seward so that we can keep people coming here. Next is, I just want to give you guys a few highlights of what's going on with our membership during this time. We are, we've upped our membership newsletter to 2 times a week just to keep our members really informed with opportunities for engagement, opportunities for information, and just to keep them up to date where we're, with the information that we're getting from the organization, U.S. Chamber. And we're also continuing to do a lot of work for advocating for our small businesses with our legislators. With that SBA loan thing, it's a difficult thing. We put a lot of effort into getting those opportunities available for a lot of our businesses and getting Zoom calls with certain staff members. Some people were able to get them and some are not. It's an unfortunate circumstance, but just something we still are trying to push for our members. This next week we're going to be starting some Zoom calls for businesses, like restaurants or small accommodations, those kinds of things, just so they can begin to collaborate and talk with each other and kind of help problem solve as we begin to kind of move forward and look to things as we're seeing kind of a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel, possibly. One thing about the business center, although we're not open to the public, we're really doing a lot of business right now. Last week, our call volume just started going up a lot, which is very hopeful. And just a number of inquiries from potential visitors about coming later this summer, July, August, and September. And so that's just been a really hopeful thing that I just wanted to share with you guys, that we're still working on that. One of the things that was kind of it wasn't random, but we had, to kind of promote in-state tourism, we had put an ad in with Alaska Magazine on their road trip thing that's going to be coming out this next month. And so in that Alaska Magazine, it's on road trips around Alaska. There's an article about visiting Seward, about being a local tourist in the state. There's another article about birding. And there's a picture about the Sea Life Center, and mentions a whole bunch of other great things to do in Seward. And so I think that is couldn't be more timely the way that worked out, as we're really looking to, that's going to be, I think, a majority of our clientele here this year is the in-state travel. And we've kind of strategically located a lot of our visitor guides in places in Anchorage, in that area for that purpose. So, so that's kind of the, I guess, the highlights of a lot of the stuff we've been doing. I just wanted to talk about membership, a lot of the marketing, kind of how as we're looking forward. We obviously want to be doing that really responsibly. And so some of our businesses were already able to open this last week, some out-of-town campgrounds, and those are being used. But we still want to make sure that that people are doing things responsibly. So.
Great, thank you. Do you mind holding on, and we'll go through and see if there's any questions for you?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Osenga, do you have any questions for the Chamber Director?
No questions.
Thank you. Councilmember Butts, do you have any questions?
No questions.
Thank you. Councilmember Kreitz?
No questions.
Thank you. Councilmember Baclan?
Yes, I just wanted to say thank you to Jason, Aisha, Marissa, and Kat for putting on a great event last Friday for the virtual bar hop. I know that Jason and really hard to put out newsletters with lots of information, and it's been really helpful for a lot of small businesses who are trying to get help and navigate through all of the different things that are going on. And I just wanted to thank them for all their hard work, even though we're all kind of just at home, and they've been doing a lot of good for all the small businesses. I just wanted to get if there was any more updates on the 4th of July.
Did you hear that, Chamber Director?
Yep, I did. As far as the 4th of July goes, we are just kind of like, we want to kind of see how things open up. We feel like there's still a lot of opportunity there that could be done in different ways, depending on what's available. We obviously want to be safe and protect the community, but we also feel like there could be some really good opportunities. And so we're just going to continue to monitor that one. And we're really we're going to come together like June 1 and take another look at it, but we're willing to make the call fairly late just because we feel like there's some things that we could still do. It'll look different, but we've already thought of some kind of creative ideas depending on what we're allowed to do at that time to kind of capitalize and on that situation. I just feel like coming into the summer, we have to really look at every opportunity that we have, even if it's a limited opportunity, to make the most out of those opportunities for our community and businesses. So,
Thank you. Do you have any follow-up, council member?
No, thank you so much, Jason.
Thank you. Vice Mayor McClure?
I was just going to ask about the 4th of July also. Other than that, none.
I don't have a question, but I have a statement. You know, it's the Chamber, I want to thank you for being just very active during this time. You've been on the forefront of a lot of things, on a lot of Zoom calls, keeping up with all the issues statewide, and making sure that Seward's represented it. And it just really illustrates how key it is to Seward to have a chamber in place. So just please thank you to you and your staff for all that you're doing. And, I had asked Jason earlier in the week to definitely bring to our attention if there's any barriers that we help take as a legislative body, if there's anything that we can do to help local businesses. So I asked him to bring those to our attention. So I want to thank him for working on those with his membership. So if you don't have any more comments, Chamber Director, we'll say goodbye to you.
all right, thank you so much. And I just want to say that I have a great team that I work with, and they deserve a lot of credit for doing what they're doing right now. So thank you, and I'll pass along their comments, your comments to them.
Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Thanks.
Next on the agenda is a presentation by the Alaska Sea Life Center and Tara Reimer.
We're going to call her as well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, City Manager Mazzaros, here getting your work out for tonight. Thanks for your help with that.
Hello?
Hi, Tara. Christy, Tara, you are on with the council meeting. How are you tonight?
Thank you. I was watching YouTube, and Jason wasn't quite done yet on YouTube, so thank you.
There must be a little bit of a delay, so thank you. Sorry to shock you.
No problem. So I don't know if you've mentioned, this is page 21 of the packet, and if I flip up and use my page numbers, just add 20 to them. Because it's our page number 1 is your page number 21.
Thank you.
So just wanted to start by thanking all the council members and the city administration for their service, and also for conducting these council meetings with as much public participation as possible. I know it's tough for all of us. So this is the first presentation I've ever given from the Alaska Sea Life Center that doesn't have a single animal picture in it. But that's not what we're here to talk about. So if you're on page 2, our outline, why are we here today? Why did I ask for this presentation? The first is I want it to be as transparent as possible, as early as possible on our financial projections, given the unusual situation. And number 2, I wanted to ask for a partnership in finding solutions for whatever that financial system turns out to be. So you can see a little bit about what I'm going to talk about, the focusing on the financial situation of the Sea Life Center. and then the impact of COVID on that and our responses. So on page 3, you'll see on the right that the relationship between the Sea Life Center and the City of Seward is fairly complex, and it involves 2 other entities. So starting at the top, the Exxon Valdez Oil Spill Trustees Council, Alaska Department of Fish and Game, the City of Seward, and then SAMS, which is the nonprofit that I work for that operates the building. And there are agreements between each of these organizations that lays out how the organization is structured. The building and the land are owned by the City of Seward and leased to us through an operating agreement. So on page 4, this zooms in on the cooperative agreement between ADF&G and the City of Seward that, like all these agreements, started in 1994-95. This one has not been amended. It's got a 50-year term. And requires the city to operate the building, maintain it for 50 years, to high standards, and if the city elects not to operate the facility, Fish and Game has an option to assume operations, and it has a year to decide. So that's the cooperative agreement. The next page, page 5, is focused in on that lease operating agreement between SAMS and the City of Seward. This is also a 50-year agreement starting in 1995, but it has been amended a few times. The last amendment was in 2017. And effectively, this agreement passes through all the responsibilities that the City of Seward has for the building to SAMS in terms of operating and maintaining the building. And it also requires some funds be maintained for major repairs and replacements, and also a termination fund, part of which can be accessed annually. So I just wanted to give that to you as background because the Alaska Sea Life Center is not just a tourism entity in Alaska, in Seward. It's actually a building owned by the city, a partnership between a nonprofit and the city that the city council needs to be aware of. So on page 6, just wanted to talk a little bit about with the Alaska Sea Life Center. I often give this presentation about animals, and at this point I wanted to focus it on the people of the Sea Life Center. We do have 75 year-round employees, and our staff are very uniquely and highly skilled. We don't have other people who do these sorts of jobs, very many of them around the state of Alaska. And so these are 75 year-round benefited employees that are 100% Seward strong. So on page 7, I just wanted to focus in, make sure you understand kind of what our annual cash flow is. And like many seasonal businesses, our lowest cash flow time is in April. And we gain back all the revenue over the summer that we need to sustain us through the following year. So our fiscal year does start in October, so that's why this year is a little off from what you generally show. But every year our lowest cash flow point is about this time of year. And this timing couldn't be worse for us in terms of a closure, but the good thing I wanted to report that happened since this report was due to Brenda is that the Payroll Protection Program loan we applied for arrived in our bank account last Thursday. So that is very good news and has really helped with our current cash flow. Moving on to page 8, I just wanted to show what our typical revenue sources are. The red is our ticketing revenues, so that's very summer specific, but we also have a lot of other different revenue sources through grants and donations and education programs. But as you can see, the ticketing piece is quite significant, and looking forward to COVID, you're probably going to expect what I'm going to say about that in a few minutes. So page 9 just provides a little more detail on our visitor numbers and visitor revenues. They're fairly similar from year to year, but it also shows the impact that one small bad piece can do to us. So last year, there was a lot of smoke and a lot of, we saw a lot of people not coming to Seward, and on good weather days they were outside, and smoky days they weren't anywhere. So we had increased our prices last year, and we saw that price increase hit our revenue in June and then totally evaporate as the smoky weather settled in for the second half of the summer. So just that smoke, we had a $350,000 impact on our ticketing revenues. So continuing on to page 10, this shows, splits our revenues into those revenues that we believe are going to be impacted by closure and those that are not. Of course, our ticketing revenues are very strong in there, but also a good chunk of our education and event revenues are also impacted. And that is fully 50% of our annual revenues. So page 11, and obviously this has a lot of detail, and in case you all want it, I just wanted to be very transparent with our numbers. The far right column just gives some sense of an average number of visitors we would expect in our closed times from March through June, and then possibly if we're closed longer. Sum total of this is we're estimating a revenue loss this summer between $1.5 and $3 million. And I'm happy to talk to people more about that if they want more details on where that number comes from, but that's the bottom line. So page 12 gives a summary of our major costs, and the big message here is that our biggest cost is our people, and that's what's in blue at the bottom. Our next biggest cost is utilities, which is the bar, and then insurance. And those are all very challenging expenses to change very quickly. So continuing on to page 13, what are our current priorities? And I just wanted to review these to make sure that everyone, this is something that we've been talking about with staff, but the first priority, which is I think everyone's priority right now, is the health and safety of our staff. Right behind that is really the health and safety of our animals, which providing that quality animal care. And then number 3 is maintaining the building, the city's single largest asset. And then the fourth priority is really maintaining the staffing level to be able to deliver on number 1, 2, and 3. Because really we are still at our low winter staffing levels, and it's really taking everything we have to maintain 1, 2, and 3. And then our fifth priority is to be positioned at the end of our fiscal year, September 30th, to restore the reserve funds that are required by our lease agreement with the city. So the next page, page 14, just talks a little bit about what we're trying to do to reduce costs. Of course, this was provided before we got the PPP. So we were scheduled to reduce all salaries and hours of our staff this week, which we have canceled because the PPP basically requires you retain your staffing levels. We have canceled our summer intern program. We haven't hired any seasonal staff, and we haven't done any travel. But the biggest challenge is those large costs really, we can't really reduce very easily. And with our grant-funded programs, reducing those actually reduces revenue and hurts our bottom line. So the sum total on cost reduction is that we can do small things, but we really can't reduce costs significantly without an extended and complete facility closure. So page 15, the more positive part, what are we doing to drive revenue? Which is where we're looking to have a loss. The first one, I already mentioned that payroll protection program loan, which was approved and funded on Thursday. Your presentation has the request amount. The amount we received is slightly less just due to a timing issue on a change we made. We received $1.046 million instead of 1.085. We did apply for the emergency injury disaster loan very early on, and we have received no response by that. We submitted a number of emergency grant funding requests. I've listed a few organizations. At this point, only the Rasmussen Foundation is a possibility for funding. The others have all said no. We did make a request to the City of Seward to consider the CPP fund, which was discussed a few meetings ago. And then from a fundraising perspective, we launched an Earth Day fundraiser last Wednesday that has already brought in $15,000, which is fantastic. And then from a marketing perspective, we're considering a number of items once reopening is possible. Working with the chamber in a lot of those ideas of once we are able to have people in the building and bringing people to Seward. So, almost done. Page 16, I just wanted to revisit those priorities and give you kind of a summary of what our overall priority is to be able to do this. In order to be positioned on 930 to restore the reserve funds, we really have to replace any lost revenues from this. That's really what's essential for us to make it through next winter. So page 17, we are doing some scenario planning, and of course right now, as things are changing on a day-by-day, week-by-week basis, we've kind of split those impacts into those non-controllable impacts and controllable internal activities, and looking at lots of different scenarios. And of course, we get in new information every day on that, and no one knows yet where we're going. So page 18, just wanted to finish off. This situation is tough for everyone. I, again, wanted to thank council for all you've done to pull the city through this, hand in hand with the administration, and it's going to be a process. We're in this together. And with the Sea Life Center being linked to the city through ownership, we're asking for your help as a partner in working towards restoring any lost revenues we see this summer. The impact on Seward is big if we have to close, and that's not an output anyone wants. We want to succeed and be successful, and together we can. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tara. I'll have you stay on the line. If you don't mind, I'll go through the council members and see if they have any questions for you.
Sounds good, thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Kreitz, do you have any questions?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Councilmember Osenga?
No questions.
Thank you. Councilmember Baclan?
Yes, I have one question. This is to Tara. Now that you received the PPP, the 1.046 million, how will that affect, if any, of the ask is from the...
And so basically, that's a good question, and I know from being on the YouTube, it's hard for people to necessarily hear all the questions. So the question was, now that we have the PPP, how does that impact our need? And I wouldn't really call it our ask of the city. Right now, it's our need. So our estimated revenue loss is $1.5 to $3 million. Now that we have that $1 million, our estimated net loss is now $500,000 to $2 million that we're looking to fill.
Thank you. Is there a follow-up?
No, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Butts? Did you have any?
questions.
Thank you. Vice Mayor McClure?
No questions.
This is Christy Terry. I just have a couple questions. So thanks for clarifying the 0.5 to the 2 million is what the shortfall is going to look like. So I just want to ask that question maybe in a different way. Now that you have that payroll protection program, how far does that get you out? Like, what's the next date that's the critical date for us to be thinking about how we can either advise you or provide assistance?
That is an excellent question. The truth is, from a cash flow standpoint, it solves a lot of the short-term problems as long as we are able to open to a certain extent. When I look at our cash flow, April and May for us are pretty much break-even months. We bring in about as much as goes out. And so I've been if we're able to operate through the summer at kind of a spring break level of activity, we don't run out of money by the end of the summer. However, we don't put enough away in reserves to make it through next winter.
Okay.
So it's a little bit of a tough question to answer because, when do you come to a crisis? Well, you don't want to come to a crisis in January, right? So that's why I'm really looking at that September 30th date, the end of our fiscal year, and that we really need to know what the plan is by then, which gives us a little bit of time to figure out what the various federal programs that still could, as it was mentioned, we're still a little uncertain funding with the $1.25 billion that went to the state. So it does still give us a little bit of time, but I feel like as long as we're able to have some visitation this summer, call it spring break visitation levels, that we're going to be okay until the fall, but then we get that problem of we can't make it through the winter.
So, and then I had a follow-up. So you did list some of the funding sources that you've explored and you've gotten no's back. Are there any outstanding funding requests? I know obviously you've made a reach out to the city. Are there any other funding sources that, I mean there is the one small business loan you haven't heard back. Is there any additional?
We've had conversations with a lot of people informally and definitely with our lobbyists, and we share the same, lobbyists and Washington, D.C. lobbyists with the city, which is a fantastic partnership situation, and I've been talking to them about our needs as well. So we have been working on the federal level with a broader coalition through the Association of Zoos and Aquariums with basically a museum lobbying group, because museum-type facilities, which we fit into that category, are in a similar situation to us in that they get a lot of their revenue over the summer and are being hit exceptionally hard. And especially zoos and aquariums are very similar to that. So, and with zoos and aquariums, one of the things that's consistent about us is we can't reduce our costs. We can't just send our staff home. We have animals that need daily care. We have buildings that must be maintained to, anytime when you've got running salt water, you've got to be maintaining your facility. So we are doing a lot of work on that angle to try to get some additional federal funding just for organizations like us. We are continuing to follow the Alaska Community Foundation because their initial program we did apply for, and they're supposed to have multiple rounds. And so the first round, I believe they only funded human services types of organizations, but we're going to apply every time. So, and we're, we've reached out a little bit with discussions with this on the state level as well, really trying to partner with, in terms of making sure, and this is at some point, I haven't done this specifically with ADF&G, but just because of what happens to the building,
right.
If at some point it makes sense to partner with the city on a request to ADF&G for some help, or the state with that, because ADF&G has a potential to have to look at the ownership of the building if there's a major issue with our sustainability.
So I think it would make sense, because this isn't anything the city can drop. I mean, obviously it's our building. To invite you back that second meeting in April, would we have a better, I don't want to keep kicking the can down the road, but I wonder if that second meeting in April, we can have another update where we're at, and then the level of, as time goes on, the increased level of how we need to address this obviously ramps up. Is that too long in the future to get an update, or what would you think about that?
And you're, I'm not, that's May, right?
I'm sorry, what did I say, May? Second meeting in May, pardon me.
Second meeting in May.
Yeah.
I think that is actually probably ideal timing, just based on the governor's daily press releases. In terms of, he's looking at things with 2-week chunks, and that gives us 2 more 2-week chunks of changes in the state. So I think that would be good timing. And I really appreciate you all being interested in talking about this. I have no problem for weeks on where we are at that point.
I think at that time we'll either need to have a work session or maybe think about having a specific subcommittee to try to look at that. So and those presentations go through the city manager, if there's no objection by him, we'll put it on that second meeting in May. And then also I have one suggestion that was made to me. The city is obviously concerned because we've seen when other communities have used the cruise ship head tax money that there's been lawsuits. One suggestion I had, or one suggestion that was given to me was someone said, why doesn't the Sea Life Center ask for that pot of money at the state level? Because then if the state feels comfortable contributing funds out of their half, then that would help us, kind of with a roadmap and see if it would be appropriate for us. So I'll just pass that along.
Great, thank you for that idea.
Yep. I won't take credit, I'm just passing through. So if there's no other questions, we'll thank Tara for her time tonight, and we'll see her in 4 weeks. Thank you, Tara.
Thank you.
So next on the agenda, thank you. Next on the agenda is public hearings. We have two ordinances for public hearing and enactment. They were introduced prior to the pandemic. So the first one is ordinance 20002. Madam Clerk, would you please read the title into the record?
Ordinance 20-002 is amending the land use plan and zoning designation of Forest Acres Lot 00, PP, NN, BJ, and XX from single-family residential R1 to multifamily residential R3.
To the council, do we have a motion and a second?
I'll move for, this is McClure, I'll move for the enactment of ordinance 20-002.
Do I hear?
Second.
Thank you very much. So administration, do you have comments?
Madam Mayor, would you like me to give a brief report?
That would be great, thank you.
So lots OOPP, NN, BJ, and XX are being asked to be rezoned from single-family residential to multifamily residential. The map is on page 45, I believe, or 44.
44.
On page 44 for you to see. This is located out in Forest Acres off of Spruce Street, just to give sort of a idea since we don't have maps up. When this was first presented to planning and zoning, it was presented to the applicant to rezone. Recommendation from community and planning and zoning and postponing that decision to include the remaining other 2 lots out of the 5. So the total proposed area with those 2 lots added, a total of 5, is 6.3 acres. And we meet all of our our comprehensive plan consistency checklist. I just want to go over those. So 3.2.12 is to expand opportunity for affordable drivers, year-round housing through appropriate land use regulations. It meets that requirement as well as the acreage. It's over an acre. Like I said before, it's 6.3. It supports a range of housing choices that meet the needs of people in various incomes and age groups. And it also creates initiatives to provide land for housing development within the city of Seward. And those are all in our comprehensive plan 3.3.12. We did meet all public hearing requirements through the planning and zoning portion. Everyone within 300 feet was notified. We did hold actually 2 different public hearings, so we noticed it for almost 2.5 months. That's it.
Thank you very much. So with that, Madam Clerk, I'll open up the public hearing comment, and I believe you have people that have sent comments in for this public hearing.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I have 2 public comments for the public hearing. The first is Jim McCracken. Madam Mayor and City Council members, I have attended the public hearing and spoken in favor of this rezoning at the Planning and Zoning meeting, as did others. Planning and Zoning approved Resolution 2020-002. Rezoning this underutilized portion of Forest Acres subdivision to R3 will contribute to Seward's future as we come out of this nationwide pandemic. Community Development has placed in your packet considerable information on this rezone. I am the owner of Lot 00. Please call me if there are any questions. I will be attending online. And then the second comment is from Kevin and Betty Christian. My name is Kevin Christian. I spoke at an earlier rezoning meeting concerning ordinance 20-002 as one of the property owners. As I stated then, I have no objections to these changes. I actually welcome them. I have no plans to make any changes to my property at this time, but believe there is always a need for more housing in this community. The majority of these properties are undeveloped at this time and are on the outer edge of other single-family and multifamily dwellings. And that is it.
Thank you. So with that, I'll close the public hearing. Council, I'll go through the roll just to see if there's any discussion, proposed changes, or questions. And I'll start with you, Councilmember Osenga.
No, nothing.
Thank you. Councilmember Butts?
No changes.
Thank you. Councilmember Kreitz?
None.
Thank you. Councilmember Baclawn?
No changes.
Thank you. Vice Mayor McClure?
I have none.
And I myself have none. So Madam Clerk, I think we're ready to call.
Voting on the enactment of 20-002, Senga,
Yes.
McClure,
Yes.
Butts,
Yes.
Kreitz,
Yes.
Baclawn,
Yes.
Mayor Terry.
Yes.
That ordinance has been enacted.
Thank you. We have one more public hearing tonight. The second one is ordinance 20-003. Madam Clerk, will you read the title into the agenda?
Ordinance 20-003 is amending Seward City Code, sections 5.35.015 and 5.35.035 to incorporate Kenai Peninsula Borough Code, Chapter 5.19, which adopts the Uniform Remote Sellers Sales Tax Code.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
This is McClure. I move for the enactment of ordinance 20-03.
Kent?
Second.
Thank you. Administration, do you have any comments?
No, I just wanted to bring forth to your attention that this was delayed because of the whole COVID incident. We did wait till the peninsula, the borough actually passed their code and adopted, and so we were scheduled for this to go out on the 9th and then for approval at the subsequent late March meeting. We're very close statewide to this going live, so I would ask for your consideration and adoption. And this means, so for the general public, there were some communities when this was first introduced at AML in the summer session back in August, and they kind of felt like, oh, if we don't do this, our people don't pay the taxes. Well, they're going to collect the tax regardless. So it just depends on where it's mapped and where the codes are applied, and then they're distributed back. So this would actually be beneficial pretty much for everybody that has any kind of online sales tax. And the rumor was that if they didn't enact it, they wouldn't collect the tax. That's really not the issue here. It's more of an issue of AML has contracted, they have a provider. Alaska is one of, I think, 3 states that does not have a statewide tax that actually has a collection, and so it's a unique challenge here for them to, how do we collect, and AML stepped up to the plate and has managed that and got it all in place. So sorry that this has been delayed, and we look forward to, I don't know how much revenue, obviously at this point a lot of people are doing a lot of online shopping, and sales are probably looking good.
Great, thank you. With that, I will open up the public hearing.
Madam Mayor, I have no citizen comments for a
Okay.
public hearing.
Well, based on that, I'll close the public hearing. I'll go through the council and see if there's any comments. Councilmember Butts?
No comments.
Councilmember Kreitz?
None.
Thank you. Councilmember Baclawn?
I just have one comment. I do support this, and I will be voting in favor. I don't think we understand. I know that it's going to be collecting the sales tax, but I don't think that we understand fully yet what the repercussions of this will be. And maybe that can be revisited later. But I've seen some people post online about certain websites not being able to deliver because they cannot do sales tax in different areas and don't have the capacity to do that. I've just seen it posted online I'm not sure if we know all the repercussions, but for now it seems like a good idea.
Thank you for your comments. Councilmember Osenga?
No comment.
Thank you. Vice Mayor McClure?
I have no comments.
I just have a quick comment. Councilmember Baclan, I do hear what you're saying. I also am in support of this, and one of the aspects that I'm most in support of is it evens the playing field with our local small businesses. So while our local small businesses do have to collect and remit sales tax, that will get them on an even playing field with Amazon or, another large, large shopping house that will also have to remit the sales tax to Seward so that there's, not any going around. So Madam Clerk, could you call for a vote, please?
Okay.
Yep. Thank you, Councilmember Baclan.
I just wanted to say too, I understand the part of it being like the large scale retailers, and they are the ones that have the ability to do this, but what I'm seeing through the comments sometimes is that it's actually the small businesses that are ordering from either smaller retailers or other retailers that may not have the capacity to process different sales taxes that are specifically in a state but different in different parts of the state. So it creates like a little bit more of a in this part of the state you're paying this much, in this part you're paying that much. So it is kind of a barrier, and some businesses who are shipping to possibly smaller businesses ordering things, it may be a barrier. But I think that could be revisited if it's a huge issue, but I still will vote for support.
Okay, thank you. That's a good clarification, and maybe we can provide those comments to AML. I know it's so new, but I think AML would probably be responsive to trying to help address that. And the city manager's nodding.
Yeah, I have a quick comment too.
Yep.
The problem is well, for one, Alaska, there are so many exemptions, caps, some collect tax, some don't. There's just so many. If it's overly burdensome, the South Dakota case basically confirmed that it's not Amazon's job to decipher, in this borough, in this city, and that becomes cumbersome. So they just don't apply it. They send it to like one general large place. So Alaska's code really does fall under those challenges of how do you decipher, which exemptions and caps and who's over 65. I mean, a lot of websites, they don't ask you your age when you order. So the code here through the borough actually does apply all of those specific codes to our different jurisdictions, and through the mapping, depending on point of sale and how they're delivered and that type of thing, applies it correctly, which then makes them actually have to do that.
Sounds good. And I guess we do have our city attorney here.
Yeah.
Did you have any comments?
No, I think that's their city manager made an important point. This is to aim towards uniformity. And I know AML would love the comment, but I think it's, eventually you're going to have something that creates a more streamlined taxation mechanism, or that is the goal.
Great, thank you. If there's no further comments, Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Voting on the enactment of ordinance 20-003. Baclan?
Yes.
Kreitz?
Yes.
Butts?
Yes.
McClure?
Yes.
Osenga?
Yes.
Mayor Terry?
Yes.
That ordinance has been enacted.
Thank you. Moving down the agenda, item 8, unfinished business. Items postponed from previous agenda. Discuss rescheduling the city attorney interviews using a virtual tool. I'll just put this on the floor. Look to the city clerk or look to comments. I can go through council comments. Councilmember Baclan, did you want to start with comments?
I think I would like to propose, to make a motion to postpone this, again. I'd like to make a motion to postpone this to the second meeting of May.
Postpone the discussion.
Postpone the discussion? Is there,
I'll second.
okay, so, did you want to speak to your motion, Councilmember Baclan?
Yes, I think that I thought we would be, at a better place of finding a tool, to have better meeting and discussion about when we wanted to reschedule. I'm open to suggestions, but I'm not sure if we're even ready right now at this point.
I'm looking to the clerk. I can't see her face, but I think she would like to say something.
I can give you a really quick update. We have not actually found a tool that would enable us to live stream a meeting for the public and have a video conference with council. And so the interviews potentially could, it's just difficult because we'd have to have them in the room in order to live stream. And then we don't have a Skyping tool that would live stream to YouTube at the same time. So we're just running into difficulties finding a really good solution because we want the public to be able to view the proceedings. And on top of that, after you complete the interviews, the next step is for council to hold an executive session, and I absolutely don't have an answer for that issue either, so.
Okay.
Yeah, it's tough.
Vice Mayor McClure?
I just feel that we need to wait until we can do it face-to-face whenever we're back. And for those very reasons, I mean, there's multiple reasons. Also, I would just like to see them face-to-face and have actually see them too.
Other council comments? Council, did you have any comments?
No, none.
Councilmember Osenga, did you have any comments?
No.
Councilmember Kreitz?
None.
And I'll just make the comment, I mean, my hope would be if we're having this on the agenda, the second meeting of next month, that there might be a possibility that we could even be face-to-face by that time. So, we're just talking right now to put this on the second meeting agenda. City Clerk, would you like to call for a vote, please?
And just to clarify, that will be a Tuesday, May 26th, the day after Memorial Day. Voting to postpone the discussion, Baklan,
Yes.
Osenga,
Yes.
Kreitz,
Yes.
McClure,
Yes.
Butts,
Yes.
and Mayor Terry.
Yes.
Thank you, that will reappear May 26th.
Okay, under new business items, we did introduce that ordinance, and then now we're down to resolutions. Item B1, Resolution 20-033. Madam Clerk, would you read that into the minutes, please?
Resolution 20-033 is recognizing the successful efforts of the state leadership and Alaska residents to slow the spread of COVID-19 and encourage the governor, as soon as reasonably practical, to rescind or modify COVID-19 mandates 009, statewide closure, restaurants, bars, and entertainment, 009, personal care services and gatherings, and 012, intrastate travel, as soon as reasonably practical to allow Alaskan businesses to resume operations, employees to return to work, and residents to receive services in a safe manner, observing social distancing requirements and other health mandates as necessary.
So I'll move for approval of Resolution 20-033, and I'll look for a second.
I'll second it. It's McClure.
So I'll start off the discussion. I put this resolution on the agenda and in the packet for this meeting. As we've already talked about tonight, things are changing quite quickly. Since the time that this needed to be included in the packet, the governor came out and has already started to work towards the phase one of reopening Alaska. I wanted to continue and have this on the agenda regardless, because I think I would like to see Seward in the queue, just to put us on the list of cities that are going to be open and ready for intra-state tourism, and just to continue to encourage the governor with his forward motion and his planning. Prior to us discussing this more, I have one amendment I'd like to propose. So the very first whereas is, you'll see that whereas the COVID-19 virus, and it references where it originates in China. I would like to have that changed to whereas the first global COVID-19 virus case virus confirmed case occurred on November 17th, 2019. And if I could get a second, I'll speak to that motion.
I'll second it, McClure.
So, I rightly had a citizen of Seward provide me with some information and note that there has been some racial profiling and some violence against Chinese Americans in this country. So to pull back on that and to make sure that we're not adding fuel to the fire with some of that racial profiling and harassment incidences, that if we could change our language, and I totally concurred. So is there any, I'll go through the list if anyone would like to have any questions or speak just to that motion that I've made, not the whole resolution. So Councilmember Kreitz, did you have any comments or questions to the motion?
None.
Thank you. Councilmember Osaka?
No question.
Thank you. Councilmember Baclan?
No question.
Thank you. Councilmember Butts?
No questions.
Vice Mayor McClure?
I have no questions, but I'm grateful for the member of the public that sent that suggestion in, because it's important.
Yeah, it's very important. Thank you. And so I've already spoken to that. So, Madam Clerk, could we have a vote just on that motion, please?
Voting on the amendment for the first whereas. Baclan?
Yes.
Butts?
Yes.
McClure?
Yes.
Kreitz?
Yes.
Osenga?
Yes.
And Mayor Terry.
Yes.
That amendment is approved.
So I'll just speak again to the main resolution. This is patterned after a resolution that was passed by Kenai, and I believe some other communities since that time have passed similar resolutions, just encouraging the governor, as soon as reasonably practical, to have movement towards, it has already begun, implementation on, the opening up of Alaska. Even as he spoke today, it's going to be slow and measured and reasonable. And within this resolution, I might just note that I also included that we would be willing to part implementation of additional openings with health mandates, continue to protect the public health and safety, including social distancing requirements that could be augmented. So I'm hoping that, it seems like the governor's being very reasonable about being open, and I'd like to keep encouraging him to do so. I'm going to go through, sorry for kind of the prescriptive way we're doing it, but I'll go through the names and see if there's comments or questions. Councilmember Butts?
No questions.
Thank you. Councilmember Baclan?
No questions.
Thank you. Councilmember Osenga?
No questions.
Councilmember Kreitz?
No question.
Thank you. Vice Mayor McClure?
No questions.
Thank you. And then I guess we're ready for a vote.
Voting on Resolution 20-033 as amended. Butts?
Yes.
Kreitz?
No.
Osenga?
Yes.
Baclan?
Yes.
McClure?
Yes.
Mayor Terry.
Yes.
That resolution is approved.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is Resolution 20-034. Madam Clerk, would you read the title into the minutes?
Resolution 20-034 is authorizing submission of a joint application with the Alaska Railroad Corporation to the U.S. Department of Transportation Port Infrastructure Development Program grant program for expansion of the Alaska Railroad Terminal Reserve Freight Dock and extension of Port Avenue.
Thank you. So at this time, I would like to take the opportunity to disclose a potential conflict of interest. I'm going to pass the gavel to the Assistant Mayor, sorry about that, Vice Mayor. And so this disclosure is being made prior to the discussion or vote on the issue. I just want to note, I think folks are well aware that I am the port manager. I work for the Alaska Railroad. This would not augment my salary per se, but I think it's pretty clear that I would have a bias towards this resolution. So if I could look to the Vice Mayor rule that I do have a conflict of interest.
Yes, this is Vice Mayor McClure, and I rule that Mayor Terry does have a conflict of interest.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to go sit in the audience.
Okay, so we have before us Resolution 20-034. We had a couple of comments early on this. This is not a public hearing item. So I guess what I need to do is go through, as the mayor's been doing, go through the list of council members and see if, I have a list, okay. See if they have any comments. So I will start with Councilmember Osenga. Do you have any questions or comments about this?
No.
Okay, Councilmember Baclan?
No question.
Okay. Councilmember Butts?
No questions or comments.
Okay, Councilmember Kreitz?
None.
Okay, and I have none either. So at this, does the administration want to speak to this?
Sure. I just want to point out that, the project, as far as the master plan and the Tiger Grant and the partnership that the city is trying to be a good partner in is definitely something that's good for Seward. The replacement of the entire project and then the development of Port Avenue is kind of a critical infrastructure for Seward. I think that I'd like to have Jim talk, but he's Jim Kubitz. It's definitely something that's in the long-range plan. It's an immediate critical project that we need to come up with funding to try to partner and get this done. But I do think that it's, for development and enhancement of the city, I think a lot of people's exposure to Seward is coming off in the docks there and walking downtown or going to the transfer locations. And I think enhancing that and updating it is a essential thing for us to grow and to move forward as a municipality. The piece that the city really contributes on this is the contribution of the tunnel discharge, so a little bit of the labor, but mostly for the staffing and those kind of contributions. It is laid out in the resolution what the city contributes, it's no secret. And I fully endorse it, and I think it's a good project. I hope that the railroad and the funding is in fact funded. It's going to be good. So that's all I had. I don't really want to give a complete overview, but the website is really good as far as looking at the master plan, and there's a lot of stuff there. So I kind of wish the mayor would actually speak about it, but I don't want to put her in that position.
Okay, thank you. I'll just ask one more time, just speak out, council members, if you have any additional comments before we put this to a vote. You can just speak your name. Delay, even hearing none. I guess we're ready to vote, Madam Clerk.
Voting on the approval of Resolution 20-034, Butts,
Yes.
Kreitz,
Yes.
Osenga,
Yes.
Baclan,
Yes.
Vice Mayor McClure.
Yes,
That resolution is approved.
thank you. And that brings us back to Mayor Terry walking, if you're not watching, walking back up here, and I'm passing the gavel back.
Next on the agenda is other business items. Me. So resume board commission meetings, council board commission work sessions, page 112. There is an agenda statement in the packet, and we've been doing council electronically, and I think that I was asking the clerk what she thought, and I believe she was talking to community development potentially, or on starting the board and commission meetings. So I wonder if, Madam Clerk, if you might talk about how that might be possible to start board and commission meetings up again, or what your thoughts are on that? I just want to make sure that we're discussing it, and if it's too soon, I understand, but I don't want to get behind the curve with some of the important business that those bodies have.
So Jackie Wild can speak to planning and zoning, but we have touched base, our office, with the Historic Preservation and the Port and Commerce Advisory Board, and they're both eager to get going again with meetings. So I fully support, and I think we can manage to conduct their meetings in the same fashion as council, because it seems to be working wonderfully. The only concern that I would have, honestly, is work sessions, because we don't have a really good means of allowing for the back and forth public interaction that is inherent in a work session, for comments to be given by the public throughout the proceeding and not just at the beginning or the end. So I am all in favor of the board and commission meetings, but not so much on work sessions at this time.
Okay. Through the city manager to the community development director.
Madam Mayor and Council, talking with the clerk and just talking to the planning and zoning staff, you know, we have sort of made our own sort of rollout, and we're looking at, you know, possibly having our first meeting in June. My biggest concern is having work sessions and meetings requiring what planning and zoning does by changing code or working on items that involve the community. That public input is a key element, and I'm generally concerned about somebody or someone not having the ability to put their input in it. So I spoke to my staff today, and you know, we are really comfortable in seeing how the next 2 weeks, the next 4 weeks roll out, and just easing into it. Right now, we are doing our daily work and doing all of the behind the scenes. We only have one application right now that's for a Rees plat, and we're working with that surveyor, and that company knows that we're looking at June for it, and they're not in any hurry. They're just working with us on it. But I'm just not comfortable with having a public meeting that requires public input and not being able to provide it to everybody.
So, June is maybe out there. Would that, I'm sure, I'm looking at administration, I'm sure you don't want to be not knowing what's going to happen if we say starting in June.
Right.
Maybe isn't fair, but we can go through council comments too, but do you think there's enough of a direction when you're ready that you would feel comfortable starting them up? Is that, could we move forward with that?
Yeah, for me and my staff and for my commission, and I spoke to my commissioners, I've just sort of gone along the lines with national planning standards and everyone else that is dealing with this. And I just, you know, they're saying take a step back, just wait and let it sort of see how it grows and does. And I just, like talking to my staff today, you know, we understand manager, we're opening businesses on Monday or the 4th, but you know, our department is gonna take one more extra step of precaution and do as needed appointments in person. We're able to do, we're just taking that extra precaution, take the same thing with council and planning and zoning.
So maybe to the clerk and administration, like, I don't know that council needs to do it all, but I'm sure you can do it on your own, but do you see any impediment that council needs to approve anything, or you're quite willing to kind of open up when you're ready?
I think we definitely have some work and issues that need to be brought out. A lot of the things I have immediate concerns are more on the work sessions, which are hard to do. Specifically, like for Japanese Creek, the kickoff meeting is like that first week of June, and it's really hard to. Stephanie Presley had had a presentation and everything geared up to go literally right after this started. So now that's kind of been delayed, and it's the kickoff meeting is still happening, and there's a lot of education and materials that may not happen before that time, but I think for me, it's, you know, it's hard to say if this is gonna kick back up and if we get kind of crazy numbers and things. I think, you know, we kind of want to be able to ratchet it back as well. I think, you know, I think the governor's, you know, getting enough pressure and everybody feels it that, you know, we want to get going and have things happening, but I think we want to try to maintain that. We can still dial it in if we need to. And I think, you know, as soon as we're ready, obviously, the governor sets something, it's easier if he does it than we make a call and it's not the right call. But I think, you know, if some of the smaller boards and commissions, I think, you know, if they can get together and do things, that's definitely what we want to do. But I think a lot of them do get attendees and they do want to, I mean, the televised piece, I don't know how some of that, if we could go from presentations and, you know, like we're going to have down the road, that would have made this a lot easier, but we don't have that capacity yet, so. I think, you know, as soon as
Can
we're,
I say something?
Yeah, well, we were gonna go, let's, if the administration's done, I'll go through calling the names. Were you
Yes, yes, ma'am,
completed?
sorry.
Okay, Councilmember Baclawn?
Hi, I just had some concerns with, confused, I guess, because opening up city, offices, but then that's everything except for community development, and I'm unclear about that, first of all.
So Councilmember Klon, community development is open. It's just our doors, we're going to do by appointment only for right now. So because what we do entails a lot of time one-on-one with people that have questions that we can't, you know, we can't just stop what we're doing and go right to them and help them. We want to be able to have them make an appointment. We can meet with them over their problems and process and probably have those answers before they even come versus sitting in the office for an hour and, you know, it's just, we're just easing into this. So right now our phones, we're answering phone calls, doing all applications and everything via email. It's just for the safety and concern of my employees, we've chosen to do it as an appointment only.
Councilmember Baclawn, did you have more questions?
Yeah, I understand that, there's concern about work sessions. What are the current city's guidelines on gatherings, inside?
so the city's specific guidelines are not really what's relevant here because the governor has said and mandated, initially there came out with a number like 25 or 20 and in large areas. I think it'd be hard to have a meeting. Generally, most small businesses are still being told 10. So obviously, if this room was 4 times bigger and we had a lot of space to spread people out, it's still a contained space. And so we're following the mandates as they come out and not necessarily creating our own mandates around numbers and meeting sizes. Holly could probably give it better.
Just to add to that, I think one thing to notice is the non-essential, non-public facing businesses and the public facing, when you're looking at service providers, you're looking at by appointment only being one of the major criteria that flows through all of the attachments. So it is a consistent opening approach, given that by appointment and limitations regarding those extensive interactions with members of the public is part of phase 1 of the responsible reopening.
And it's challenging because I've heard a lot of things from business owners that are saying we don't want to open, and it's like you don't have to. You're a private entity. If you choose to require a lot more than the standards differently, it's up to you to do that. We just can't mandate that or make the public adhere to that in public spaces.
So, you know, one of the reasons I brought this forward, and I still will get to all of council, I'm sorry. So Rule 3, your current Rule 3, says that all boards and commission meetings may be held electronically in the same manner prescribed to council meetings in Rule 1. So it seems like we can start holding those meetings with this and just not hold work sessions.
Sure.
Okay. So, Councilmember Baclan, I'll get back to you, but I'll go through the rest of the list. Councilmember Kreitz?
I have no question.
Okay. Did you have comments on starting the boards and commission meetings at all, or?
No, I'm in agreement with that as long as the state mandates are followed with the number of persons that are in the room and the social distancing and the mask.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Osenga?
I'm just pretty much in agreement with Councilmember Kreitz just said. I actually really was kind of wondering how this came up, but I can see it there, so that was it.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Butts?
No comments or questions.
Thank you. Councilmember Baclan, did you have any follow-up?
Yeah, I am in favor of resuming the meetings. I think we'd be happy if 10 people showed up to a work session. There's really not that many people that show up, so I think a lot of comments still can be submitted online, and in the process that they are now, I think we've seen that happen. The last meeting was over 90 emails from the council meeting and concerns about facial coverings. So I don't think that we should limit not having work sessions, because I don't think that there's, it's seven commissioners plus administration is 8, and we'd be hard pressed to get another 10 people to show up and be, and not be able to social distance in the audience. So I'm in favor of it.
Thank you. Vice Mayor McClure?
I have no comments.
Okay. So I guess I just want to turn it around to administration. So it seems like even without a vote of this body, you could be, we can start working with those boards and commissions. I know that PACCAB maybe is close to their summer hiatus, but at least opening that up. And then I don't know, to the attorney, is there anything else that needs to be done, or?
No.
Okay.
No, I think you guys are well positioned to move forward.
Okay. And it sounds like they're, maybe we'll work on the comfortability with work sessions. Okay. Are there any further comments? Thank you. Next on the agenda is attendance for the upcoming Rural Energy Savings Program webinar to be held on April 29th regarding FDA loans. Councilmember Baclan, I'll turn to you. I know you've put this on the agenda.
Thank you, Mayor Terry. I have done a lot of research in the last week from what the last radon came from the electric department director, Mr. Fowles. He listed some concerns about the rural, the RESP, or the Rural Energy Savings Program. The first one was that it could be cumbersome on departments, which I agree with, but also through my research, some cities and municipalities have actually farmed that portion out to either nonprofits or different companies. The difference is that it would drive the interest rate up a little bit. I've also spoken to the FWREA, and that is the utility that represents Southwest Arkansas. I contacted and spoke to people from Holy Cross in Colorado. I've also talked to Washington, Arkansas. I've also talked to some electric co-op, the Appalachian Electric Co-op, and Missoula Electric Co-op. Every single utility that I spoke to has spoke very highly of this program. They're all in support. Many of them have realized savings with up to 500 to 700 people in their community. And many have found, I also provided a layout through the clerk. I got an application from one of the utilities, I believe it was Umatilla, Colorado. Umatilla Electric Co-op, and they provided a copy of the application process. And it seems to be very beneficial to all of those communities. Nobody has actually, any of those utilities that I contacted spoke poorly of it. The risk on recovery was one of the questions that I asked all of them. All of them combined, only 2 companies had said that they had one default each. And the default was a catastrophic event. It was a fire on one of them, and the other one didn't say what the other one was, but it was a fire and the homeowner had no insurance. So the utility had to swallow $1,500 that it cost that they loaned out. And also on that, Umatilla in Colorado was attaching the energy bill to their mortgages. So it had a little more heft to it, so a little more weight on the owner paying for it. They also had, so one of the questions was, or the concern was that attaching, recovering money from people's utility bills. The reason the house is that there's savings realized from it, and the payment of the loan cannot exceed the savings of the whatever the homeowner is looking to do. So if you bought a heat pump and it saved you $50 a month, that would be your loan payment, and then it would pencil out within the 10 years of the loan. The money is provided at no cost to the city by the FDA. Most utilities were seeking $1 to $3 million, and the fee for the loan was anywhere from 1.9% to 5%. So it was a very low interest rate that was actually charged, and that interest rate was actually being provided to the city to handle the application process and administration of the loan. So the other concern was with the utility, and most of them attached it to the meter. So when you say you bought a heat pump and attached it to, and it was then attached to your meter, if you moved or if you sold your house, that would be under your mortgage agreement or your lease agreement, because it would stay attached to that meter, and that meter would then assume the cost of that loan. Now, like I said before, the savings could not the payment of the loan could not go over the savings. So there was a lot of benefits to it. And then the third was that it must apply to energy upgrades. And to say that we shouldn't help our citizens figure out energy savings, when that's one of the largest complaints is that about utility bills, is I think a pretty horrible statement to make. We should be trying to help our ratepayers lower the utility bills. And you know, it is the rest of the situation where we do sell electric, but we also need to responsibly expand our utility infrastructure to create more ratepayers. And yes, it doesn't, the outlines of the must apply can be designated by the city. So, and like I said before, the savings have to match the payment. So if the savings didn't pencil out for certain upgrades to their house, then it just wouldn't apply. They would not qualify for the loan. Especially in a time now where the state weatherization program has run out, it would be a great time to try and realize some financial help from the federal government. So, like I said, I've done a lot of research on this, and if you come with questions about this, and any questions.
Thank you, Councilmember Baclan. You certainly have done a lot of research. I just have a quick question for administration. So I know there was lots of arguments against this, but I don't know if administration really realized it was just to attend the webinar. So it wasn't asking you for your firstborn child, you know, or not like saying, hey, we're going to do this. But to the city manager, do you think it would be possible to have someone from finance attend this?
I mean, obviously, I know the utility director has a lot of knowledge of it. I actually lived where Tri-State implements this pretty significantly. I mean, everybody buys LED bulbs, but then Tri-State, we had 75 linemen in our shop. They probably had bigger staff just in their administration than the city. So it's kind of, I think, a lot of small utilities don't do this because it is burdensome. I wouldn't want to, John could speak to that, but I think it's hard because a lot of these are co-ops and they're bigger. It's just, it really depends. A lot of places.
You're making an argument for
Yeah.
us to sell our utility, city manager.
I feel like, a lot of places require Energy Star, right? Appliances, windows, we don't, if you live in a place where your inefficiencies require you to use tons of energy, it makes sense to do types of things through the code and through processes. And I'm not saying that this isn't one of those. It's just kind of, it all goes hand in hand, right? At what level do we pay a subcontractor or our own administration over there to kind of do all this work? Does that make sense? I think initially it's like a lot of things. You get into it, it's going to cost you something. Is it long-term reward going to bring you back the value, or isn't it? I couldn't answer that, but I think that's something that we need to consider. It's definitely something we could have somebody attend this, obviously.
So I'll look, I know that Vice Mayor would like to make a comment.
Oh, it was just the comment you made that we aren't discussing the merits of the program, just if somebody should attend this webinar. That's the entirety of this, so I would think.
And then so that's a good comment. And then I'll go through council and see if there's any other comments. Councilmember Osenga, did you have any comments?
Is there a cost to this?
Is there a cost to the webinar, Councilmember Baclawn?
No.
Okay, so there's no cost. Thank you. Did you have another question, Councilmember Osenga?
No.
Councilmember Kreitz? Thank you. Councilmember Butt?
No, no.
And from Councilmember McClure, Councilmember, did you have comments?
I want to refer back to the comments earlier from public comments. I was contacted by Doug Ward, representative of JAG, and not only would this be able to help our residents, but it would also be able to help our small businesses that are struggling with a high cost of electric. They could be able to get loans to make their electricity usage much more feasible and at a very low interest rate. And the interest rate is what the city would decide that would be the cost to the city to administer the program. So I understand what the city manager is saying about, it may be burdensome, but the utility and the city works at the pleasure of the public and works for the public. So those are things that we should be looking to our city to provide for us as ratepayers, as shareholders of this community, to really invest back into our community what we're paying into it. So if all done, I would like to make a motion.
I guess I just have some final comments too before that motion. I mean, I think it makes sense, everything we do at the city should be creating work for ourselves, and sometimes it's hard, but in this current economic climate, we should be hustling to help our businesses that pay for city services. So in my opinion, I'm all for sending someone. I don't know if we need a motion if the city manager is willing to send someone, and I don't think we can direct him to send someone from the finance department, but I think that your point with requesting that was to, because of some of the loan requirements and different things. Is that right, Councilmember Baclawn?
Yes, and I would the reason why I want to make a motion is I would like whoever attended to come back with a report on, the pros and cons of joining this as a Swiss climate. The webinar will allow the person attending to ask some specific questions regarding this program and how it may or may not work for us. So I do believe, when the city manager says it may be burdensome, then is the adjustment in the interest rate too high for it to be to be encumbered by the city? So I guess that's where I was going to. I would like to know after this if this is something that we should pursue. And because we just talk about it and we won't really know what the outcome of it is. So.
Mayor Cherry,
Yes, Councilmember Osenga.
this is about attending a webinar, right? We don't need to be getting into all the minutia of this program.
Right. That's correct. I was kind of surprised that the city came back with some arguments against the program when we're just talking about having someone attend the webinar.
Sounds like
Yeah.
Tony would attend.
Yeah, but the problem with having a council member attend is then the administration will still have questions for the council member. I think it cuts out the middleman by having a city staff person attend. Are there any further comments from council? Scott, did you have any further comments?
No.
Okay. Council member, did you want to just send someone, or would you like to have a motion, or?
I mean, I definitely, it's only, 2 hours or something? I don't remember what the.
Yeah, it
timeframe
starts
is.
at 2 p.m. Eastern Time on Wednesday, which would be, 10 o'clock our time, Wednesday, April 29th. It doesn't say how long the webinar is. Would that be something someone could come back to council and give kind of a pro and con?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. So council member, the city manager's willing to send someone and come back to us with a pro and con. Does that meet the intent of what you're looking for?
I'd still like to make a motion.
Okay, go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to direct the city manager to have someone from finance attend the RESP webinar on Wednesday, the 29th, and bring a pro and con report back to city council.
I'll look for a second. I'll second for discussion, but I want to look to the city attorney. I mean, are we able to direct the city manager to send someone from a specific sector of his staff?
No, I think the ideal motion language would be a motion to direct the city manager or his or her designee, or his designee, to attend the webinar and prepare a report regarding pros and cons and the financial implications for council. And that way, the product is clear, but you're directing the city manager and leaving it to the city manager to decide who to send at his direction.
Councilmember Buckland, did you hear that recommendation? Would you be willing to amend your motion?
I'm a little concerned because we got feedback from the electric department about this that was all negative. And in my research, I found most of the research most of the comments that was provided by the electric department director to be false. So my concern is that.
Point of order, please.
Go ahead.
Can we please, we're just trying to see about doing somebody to attend a webinar. Can we please stick with that?
Okay, so the question on the floor is, Councilmember Buckland, will you amend your motion per the city manager's, per the city attorney's recommendation? I think what really confused things, actually, what really confused things was the feedback from administration when we're just talking about a webinar. So clearly, we're asking administration to send someone to the webinar. I'll put it back to Councilmember Buckland. Would you be willing to change your motion to the recommendation from the city attorney?
I'd like to make a motion to amend amend my, my original motion to have the recommendations of what the city attorney has said.
I'll have my second. Do you have that motion, Madam Clerk?
Direct the city manager to attend the RESP webinar and provide a statement of pros and cons.
City manager
Or his designee.
Thank you. Can we call for a vote, please?
Voting on that motion, Kreitz,
Yes.
Buckland,
Yes.
McClurk,
Yes.
Buds,
Yes.
Osenga,
Yes.
Mayor Terry.
Yes.
That motion is approved.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is discuss moving forward with the recodification of Seward City Code. Madam Clerk?
So, council, you
That
recall,
was just an amendment to the original motion.
So, did you have further discussion? I thought the ultimate goal of that item was to send someone to that webinar.
Can I get a point of order from the clerk? Was that just a change of the motion to direct the city manager?
I did accept I accepted your acceptance of the city attorney's recommendation of language as the modification to the motion.
So the main motion still has not been voted on?
So the main motion I took as being changed to say direct the city manager or his designee to attend the RESP webinar and provide a statement of pros and cons as the whole motion.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the clarification. So, Madam Clerk, new business item number 5.
So council, in February, when I had my evaluation with you, one of the items that was discussed and set as a goal is the recodification of the Seward City Code. And following that evaluation, I contacted MuniCode, who's our vendor who provides our online city code delivery, and got a quote from them for the cost of recodifying code. And so in a nutshell, it costs $15,000. It takes 1 year to perform the operation. The cost of that $15,000 is split in 2 parts over 2 years, so that would require a mid-cycle budget amendment for 2020 as well as 2021. And at the end of the process, we would have to engage our city attorney to review the proposed recommendations and changes that they have discovered, so that we would vet it with our own city attorney and then bring forward any appropriate ordinances to remedy or, fix our code. So I think, unless questions about what the process entails is, so I'm seeking direction.
So let's discuss it first, and then we'll see how we want to move forward. So, Councilmember Kreitz, did you have any comments? You weren't necessarily here when we've talked about the issues with our code and our charter and trying to clarify some of those and incorporate some changes. Did you have any comments or questions for the clerk with what she's proposing this evening?
No, not at this time. I did get some clarification on the work session that we had that Saturday, and I am in agreement with that.
Oh, yeah, right. Thank you so much. That's true. That we've talked about in multiple occasions, so thanks for reminding me. Councilmember Osenga?
No.
Okay. Councilmember Buckland?
No, I just wanted to thank the clerk for researching this. I think this is a great project for the city.
Thank you. Councilmember Butts?
Nothing.
Vice Mayor McClure?
I have nothing.
I just want to speak in favor of this. I know we are really being careful about our funds that we're spending But this would be an excellent use of funds that can help us in the future with attorney costs or confusion. So this is actually, while there might be a small outlay or a large outlay to start with, it's going to save us in the long run. So Madam Clerk, do you need a motion, or can you just get a general feel, or how did you want to do that?
I am okay if there's just no objection from council, and I can move forward with preparing the mid-cycle budget amendment and start engaging. And just to be clear, this will be a sole source. I have, every reason to work with this vendor for this, as long as there's no objection from council.
Great, thank
Okay.
you. Next, under informational items and reports, I'm going to list the 3 items, and then I'll just quickly go through the list and see if there's comments or questions. The 3 items under informational items and reports, the first is ongoing city project and goal list. The second is the March 2020 City and Providence financials. The third is the clerk's memo verifying timely receipt of annual financial disclosure forms. So I'll just check with Osenga, did you want to speak to any of those items?
No comment.
Okay, thank you. Baklan, did you want to speak to any of those items?
Yeah, I just wanted to know from the city manager, what the Providence financials are looking like right now. I know that there's a lot of hospitals that are struggling. Are we looking at any problems arising from this, financially with, the clinic or Providence?
So their audit should be wrapped up here. They asked for an extension. That would be a more appropriate, is their audit from previous years. I don't really, I don't feel like, they're in the hospital business. Their numbers of residents are pretty consistent. Those that were with us a year ago, and looking back 2 or 3 years, there was some inconsistency previously with the number of persons that they housed and with the financial reimbursement mechanism, because when they were low, we had some issues because of financing. They were short, so that's really been taken care of. So I don't know that that applies to that end of it with the emergency room and that type. That would be something you could ask Robert to come speak about, or his new finance director, but I don't really feel like my opinion would be a good about the data right now. I mean, there are reports in here, you can look at that. If you have questions, we could definitely reach out to them.
I might just add, I do know, let's see what page that's on. I think there's a couple blank pages in here. I do know when I asked them if they had applied for the grant funding available, they were going after grant funds with the COVID-19 situation. I know that I think they're down to 30 people in their long-term care facility, because they're keeping one lodge wide open. So if they're getting close to their audit, they do come and give us a presentation. It would be interesting to see where that falls on the calendar and reach out to them and see where they are after this. Thank you, Councilmember Baklan. Did you have anything else that you have a question about?
I guess I did have questions more for the clinic, but, I guess, if they were gonna be applying, for more funding through the second round of the CARES Act. But I guess we can, get those questions somehow, some way out.
So maybe, Councilmember Baklan, if you, let's email those questions through the city manager, and maybe we can include something in the next, council meeting's manager's report. Does that sound good? Okay. And then, I forgot where I left off, but Councilmember Butts?
No comment.
Okay, and Councilmember Kreitz?
No question.
And then, Vice Mayor McClure?
I have no questions.
Okay, and I have no questions or comments. So, before we get to the next step, I might just thank again council members for, being patient with me and going through our list process. That's been helpful. So, Madam Clerk, are there any citizen comments for this second opportunity?
No, ma'am, I did not receive any.
Okay. And so now we're on to council and administrative comments. Administration, would you like to start off?
No, I think it's gone pretty well, I think. I think it's hard, just having a different format, and
Yeah.
it's challenging, but it's, in some ways it feels easier, but it's hard not to see the folks and work through the issues. It's a little challenging.
I agree.
But I appreciate everybody's patience, and it's hard. I think, a lot of the things I think are good to bring back in the next report and kind of ask for things and get more specific. It's hard to just off the cuff. I do get notifications and have knowledge about things with some of the HRSA funds and things, but I just really kind of don't know where I should answer for those other directors or entities. It's just, it feels a little bit like I would prefer they come and actually give an update.
That's a good idea. Councilmember Osenga, I'll start with you for comments.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I just wanted to say, just be safe out there and please everybody fill out their census forms.
Yep, good. Thank you. Councilmember Butts?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wanted to, there again, tell everybody, like I've been saying for months, keep washing your hands. Letting everybody know that might give us together. Hang in there. We're going to make it. We're going to get through all this thing together. And I've seen a lot of people that's really been great when they've been out on their evening walks and afternoon walks or picking up garbage, and I think that's really, really great. I had one comment which I thought was really great, was a couple went out to go on their walk, pick up garbage, and couldn't find garbage. So that's all really great stuff too. So we can keep on doing that here too. So, and if anybody knows of anybody who is in need, please, you can still contact me or contact someone else if there's a few. We kind of all work together on this one. Thank you.
Thank you. Word. Councilmember Kreitz?
I would just like to thank everyone, and I would like to encourage everyone to stay on top of the health mandates that the governor is putting out daily and changes that are coming out. It seems like just with the COVID, everything changes every day, so just encourage everyone to please take a look at those websites and keep abreast of what you're supposed to be doing that particular day.
Thank you. Good word. Councilmember Baclan?
Thank you, Mayor Cherry. I want to thank everyone that had participated and donated with the Chamber Virtual Bar Hop this last Friday. It was a lot of fun, and it was a lot of fun to see a lot of people engaging and enjoying what was happening on Friday. I want to thank the Chamber again for all their hard work, keeping all the small businesses informed about the loans and different programs that they can participate in. I would also like to honor all of our volunteer firefighters, as well as our city administrative volunteers, our chief and our deputy chief, and I would also like to thank the Sustainable Seward Group for doing the Earth Day event last week, and seeing all the pictures of those people posting events and things they participated in that week. And I'd like to, Councilmember Butt said, there's a lot of help that people providing help in the community. The Sewer Prevention Coalition, through Neighbors Helping Neighbors, has some help that they may be able to provide to people. So if you are struggling right now, or if there's anything that you need, reach out to the Sewer Prevention Coalition to see how they may help you. And if you're not comfortable calling them, you can call me. My phone number is 907-422-7320. And I'd also like to say, within regards to the resolution about opening up, that was not an easy vote tonight. There are a lot of people who are concerned about their health and their well-being. And the best thing we can do is stay at home right now if you can. Keep wearing a facial covering when you're in public spaces. mind social distancing. Let's keep the numbers down. Let's keep on a forward track of opening up Alaska in a responsible way. And I want to thank all the other council members for their time and their patience tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Vice Mayor McClure?
Well, pretty much everything's been said as usual, but I do want to encourage people to fill out the census forms, and if anybody still doesn't understand how to get online, give me a call, I'll help them. I've done that for several. I also want to once again remind people that there are a lot of older people particularly that have been shut in for a very long time and really appreciate phone calls. So that's my mission, is to call and talk to people a lot. So, and I'm so impressed with people going out volunteering and using those extra yellow bags and picking up the trash. Every year I participated in the cleanup day, you know, and I was really disappointed there wasn't a cleanup day, and by the time I got around to trying to clean up, it's cleaned up. So I just really want to say thanks to that. And I've gotten a lot of calls lately, and there's been stuff on social media about loose dogs. And it seems to be that maybe some people don't realize we do have dog ordinance in Seward, and you do need to have your dog on a leash, or I think it says under command or under control or something. And there have been some real scary incidences lately down on the bike path of loose dogs harassing dogs on leashes or other things, and I just hate to see that. I think maybe people are taking advantage of not so many people being here and allowing their dogs to run a little bit more, but it is an issue, and they should be very cautious amongst while you're doing all your social distancing and everything else. So anyway, and I also want to thank the mayor. Thank you, Mayor Terry, for running a really good meeting. This is a awkward situation we're in, talking through these masks here and calling people, on people. But I think we're doing okay with this, but I can't wait to get back to a situation where at least the entire council can be sitting up here.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. Thank you. I just have some comments. The governor is reopening Alaska, but the key to that is responsibly. So his responsible opening with phase 1, he wants to see that we're keeping down, that we're the curve, and then only then will he move forward with phase 2. So his utmost goal is to protect the health of Alaska, and he said that he'll start addressing hotspots. So don't let Seward become a hotspot. So if we start, one thing I saw this weekend is people really think it's a free-for-all. If we start being a hotspot, then our businesses are going to have to close down again. And that's what we're working against. We're helping our neighbors. We want those businesses to be successful. So we're just really asking that people are even more careful at this point so that we're caring for our neighbors, especially those local businesses that keep us through. So, again, the governor said we just have to look at New York and Italy to know that this is something that's real. In those locations, their healthcare systems were overrun. Samaritan's Purse had a triage in Central Park. Italy had numbers where people were staying home for, a month at a time. So we do not want that to happen in Seward. So again, if we're careful, whether you like it or not, whether you believe it or not, if you're able to be careful, you are just going to help the whole economic situation in Seward. So we will never stop the virus. That's not the goal. The state's trying to keep those numbers down and keep our neighbors healthy. Again, while we start having people come here from other parts of the state, that's great. We want our economy to open up, but we will be closed down again, per the governor, as a hotspot if our numbers start to balloon out of control. So what does that mean? Just looking at the state recommendations, no crowds, wash your hands, a mask is recommended, and you can read all the arguments in the world, but I'm telling you right now, the state is recommending a mask. Follow social distancing. We can do this. This just buys more time for our healthcare providers, and we will only win this if everyone's helping. I can't say anything else, and I know that there's a lot of arguments out there, but let's try to work as a community and be successful this summer so we can have revenue coming in for our small business owners and all the people that are not currently working. I want to thank city staff. I know there's some opening, not opening, everyone's adapting pretty quickly. I was glad to see that the electric department is back at work, getting those requests for new lines open. And I just have one more comment that all our thoughts are with Councilmember Cease. And we just, I think everyone wishes the same, and it's just a hard situation. But again, I want to thank the public for dealing with kind of the weird situation and our awkwardness. I want to thank council being on the phone. If I'm doing this in an awkward way, just let me know if you want to be called on differently, if there's something I can do better. Thank administration for just everything, and then I'll just check with the city attorney if there's any final comments. Yep, thank you for coming down today. Madam Clerk? Okay, great. So I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
9:35.